Hello friends, and welcome to the next shot of my Futurama project. And this week was all about trial and error and lack of planning causing issues. And I relearned an important lesson, and that is to use reference. Reference. But we'll get into that later. But first, let me tell you about how I started this week. So this next shot I was working on came after the professor talked to the gang at the table, and the camera then shows him from behind as he points his flipper at the screen and turns on the TV. And to do this, I wanted to add a little bit of movement. But while doing that, I changed my mind a few times. So first, I concentrated on drawing the professor from behind at a 3/4 view, so you could still see his face a little. And I started with a sketch level and the pencil brush. And I'm starting to use the standard raster levels more and more for this, because the raster pencil feels so natural as you draw, and I don't need to adjust the colours after drawing them, and I don't need the Toonz raster line and area features. So raster levels suit this perfectly. Anyway, after sketching, I inked him, and then added a little movement to his arm. But it wasn't much movement, so I added a plastic tool mesh and a simple skeleton and animated his body leaning backwards and forwards, and moved his head a little. And this is where the lack of planning came in, and I started to change my mind. And it's also what's made this session take so long this week. In fact, I worked on this over 3 separate days, and I'm still not entirely happy with it. So I intended to add the skeleton to just the body and the head, but then I extended it to the arm to see how it looked, and it did add a little something. But it had the effect that any non-planned plastic tool animation does, and that's that the movement didn't just affect the area that I wanted it to. Some of the body moved when I moved the arm, and that's because of the overlap. So I decided to scrap this, and instead I used the disconnected technique. And this is where you draw 2 parts of your character totally separate, and then you connect them together using the plastic tool. And this allows you to move one part of the character in front of another in the same drawing, which is perfect for this instance, or so I thought. But because this only allows sideways movement, it didn't quite work out in this 3/4 view. And it could have been close enough, I could have left it, but I wanted to try something else, which I did the following day. But first, I added the lip sync. And in this view, he only says one word, but I'd already set up the lip sync for the whole speech last week. So I'd still got the mouth shapes for this available on another column. And as you can see, I moved that head close to the new head, and then drew in the few mouth shapes that I needed. And this demonstrates a good use of the automated lip sync, and that's that you don't have to use the mouth shape that you get from importing the lip sync data file. You can just use them as a guide, which was exactly what I did here. So the next day, I wanted to redraw the arm moving and pressing the remote control. And this was where I finally used a reference. And as I usually do, I googled first to try and find some images of looking over the shoulder, but couldn't quite find what I was after. So I recorded myself on my phone doing the same action that I was after, and then transferred that to my computer. And I did the action a few times, and from the best one I picked 3 photos that showed the main 3 keyframes of action, and copied these into my project, and you can see them in the column behind the professor. So I used them to give me an idea of how to draw the arm foreshortening into the distance. So after placing the photo roughly in the right position using the animate tool, I sketched the 3 positions where I thought the arm should go, and then I inked and painted them in. But even then I wasn't happy with it. His hand just looked too small. But I ignored it initially and moved on to animating his head turning. And I wanted him to face the screen a little after pressing the button, again just to add some small movement. So I sketched in pencil first, then inked and painted it on the main level, And this was okay. I think I was happy with this part. So then I re-added the plastic mesh and skeleton, and added those small movements back. Then one last time I redrew the arm and hand because it looked too small. Yet again I was adding this from my imagination, so I'll stretch the arm out too far to the side, and it still just looks a bit wrong. And I think I'll probably come back to this at some point in the future, but I've worked on this small shot far too much for 1 week. I'm starting to go shot blind. And this highlights a known weakness for me, and that's my anatomy skills, or lack of them. I just need to take some time out and draw people through gesture, solid forms, and all the other techniques I do know about, but just haven't found time to exercise with. And to draw hands, everyone's favourite body part to draw, or not. But this project really is for me to work out some possible animation workflows in OpenToonz, and to find the features that work best for me. And for that, this project's going well. But finally this week, away from a screen recording, I then added a minor change to last week's animation, to show the professor lifting up the flipper, ready for the shot to come after. So here's the full animation so far. So I hope you'll keep following as I continue to work with this Futurama project, subscribing if you already haven't, and ringing that bell to be notified of new videos so you don't miss an episode. And I hope you'll join me next week for more Futurama. So I'll see you then. And that's a guarantee.